it almost feels to me like a way of avoiding trying to speak about it,
Yeah.
which maybe is not the point, but I don't know, I guess the sort of stepping around trying to speak it directly just makes me yearn more for the ability to speak it directly.
Mm. But can we speak it directly?
You know, to me, just thinking of Walt Whitman, look for me under your boot soles says more to me than vocabulary for Peter Innisfree Moore.
Hmm.
So maybe that's a personal choice.
Hmm. Yeah, more of a circle of life thing. So does anybody want to respond to the whole question of avoidance in this?
Well,
Lily?
I think I lean actually more towards what Molly was saying, even though I originally suggested the Peter and Streamart poem. But I think for me, like, um, there's so much like need to make semantic sense in everyday life, whether you're grieving or not. So,
Yes.
and we can't always get the space where we would want to sort of like be able to do some work that's productive, but maybe not in a conventional sense. Like we can't always like we might not be able to find someone who wants to listen to us talk that way, or we just might not be able to find like a space where we have permission to think that way. And so I think in some ways a poem like this can open up that space for us, even if like Peter Innisfree Moore is not the person you lost or isn't like directly part of the feeling you're feeling, but just gives you don't even really have to like read through the whole thing that much and think about him specifically like you can, but you could fill it with your own thoughts about your own thing.
That's so well said. Julia, I've always thought, and I might be wrong about the history of human language, but I've always thought that that formula and set piece language or ritual was a way for human beings to respond to loss that's just too painful, and that we've developed a very elaborate fiction that language is adequate, that some people call ritual, some people, I mean, religion obviously in the example that Eric used shows how religion gives solace or consolation by allowing us to map onto incomprehensible, inexpressible loss something easy and ready at hand. And I've always thought that the reason why I like modern and experimental poetry is that it is seeking not to diss ritual and the power of ritual, but is seeking alternative rituals that revisit the whole problem of what's incommensurate. I don't know. I'm rambling. Do you want to respond to this issue?
Yeah, I think there's something to when we think about how many cultures use not just ritual, but break it down a little bit, incantation and repetition and song to contain experience and provide a space and provide a cage. I think, of course, the word cage is really important to us in lots of ways this week. And this whole conversation is, I think, tying in really well to a discussion happening right now in the discussion forums that Mandana started, and we've got Robin Cohn and Terry Talty also participating in this. So Mandana asks, is it possible that we're hesitant around chance operations because we have discomfort around the innate chanciness of our own lives? So there's a way in which the form of these poems, which are enacting the chance we all experience, is hard. It's like emotionally hard, it's mentally hard to grapple with this, because what we're grappling with is chance itself, not just the poems themselves.
Yeah, and I think we've started this conversation way back when, I guess the first one was Let Us Describe by Gertrude Stein, where she is memorializing presumably friends who got in a car accident, and the poem reproduces the accident, and that's not what literature traditionally does. Literature traditionally is supposed to cover over that accidental quality to life, right? I mean, Milton's Lycidas, which is a great elegy, ends with consolation.
Right.
And, you know, the Lycidas I would like, and I'm sorry, John Milton fans out there, but the Lycidas that I would like would end more like the Amiri Baraka poem Incident, where we're so confused about this loss that we don't know who the subject is and who the object is, or where the pronouns work. My world, Molly, you know, my world is rocked. My world, pronouns don't make sense, cause and effect doesn't make sense. I want a language that's commensurate with that. I think that would be It's not a response to your desire to have some kind of direct approach to loss, to avoid avoidance. But maybe it ends up being direct. Mary Barnes, 20 hours ago, or maybe about 24 hours ago now, wrote, I'm late coming to this thread. I too found the performance elegy very discordant. And yet, as I listened, an image emerged from the film Fahrenheit 451 in which Clarissa is memorizing a book. In fact, whoever joined the group or collective was memorizing a book. They became the books because in the society portrayed, books were banned. I suppose this was a memorial to the stories or a way of preserving the writing material. Vocabulary was McClo's way of memorializing more. It's what matters here. Then she says, I have sat on my deck. I'm glad she's not sitting on her desk. I've sat on my deck listening to the cacophony around me. Birds singing, the raucous cry of blue jays and crows, the hammering of shingles, the revving of a motor. I could go on, but these sounds are part of the human condition. I wonder, by creating such a chart, if McClo wasn't giving homage to Moore, that he was part of this wild chaos we call life. And this was my response. Isn't the raucous cry of the blue jays just as discordant? Yes, there is discordance in nature itself, of course. What the human mind has done in the past 5 or 6 or 2100 years, depending on your sense of history, is to organize this chaos by way of an art or conceptualizing that fictionally orders the chaos. The work we're talking about now permits the natural chaos to come through by attempting to take the fiction-making, ordering human ego a little bit or a lot out of the way. Mary, your comment on response to Mary Barnes?
Well, first of all, Mary Barnes has been such a wonderful person on the forums.
Yes,
to
she
interact
has.
with.
Yeah.
I think that was so beautifully put to think about the chaos that's around us in terms of the sounds that we hear, not just from the street sounds, the sounds that we're hearing here in the Kelly Writer's house as trucks go by or as the building is being built next door, but also just natural sounds, birds, animal sounds, the sounds babies make are not ordered, organized sounds, but are beautiful nonetheless and are part of our ambient.
Such a great, that last example of babies crying, right? I mean, isn't that the classic instance of, like, if you're not that baby's parent or loved one, you think, that's pretty annoying if you're on the plane or something, but then you realize it's the most beautiful sound. Lily, you look like you were about to say something.
Well, I think, like, actually, to take the example a little bit more precisely, maybe like birds or babies or whatever, like, their own actions are not discordant or unordered according to their own sense of logic. Like,
right.
Birds don't just sit on a branch and say whatever they want for no reason. They have really specific reasons. We just don't necessarily have access to that. So it's kind of in a similar way, like, hearing that apparently discordant sound is music. It's just discordant because it doesn't, and it sounds like very hippy dippy or whatever, but I do think about this a lot. It just isn't the way we know to think about sound.
Right.
So it's kind of about, like, hearing something discordant and trusting that there is something that organizes it. You just don't know what that thing is.